Okay, close. So here we have the file that I've showed you a few times. I'm just going to put this down here just so we have a bit full screen. So just to recap, you're going to have a tab for each question. You're going to have screenshots for each question. At the top of each, you're going to show what the actual wording is. So you're going to use the precise wording from your survey. Don't just copy what I wrote, because this is just a made-up example. So maybe yours is, how likely are you to buy this service in the next 12 months, right? So don't just lift what I've put here. And then whatever your response options are, you're going to put them here. And you're going to have these weights. And then we have these weights so that we can create a mean, because we're turning into an interval. This is an interval question. And then for each of the 40 respondents, you're going to indicate their answer by putting a number 1 in the appropriate column. So this person said probably will buy, respondent number 1. So I put a number 1 in that column. And because it's a probably will buy, they get a weight of 75, right? So I put a 75 over here. And just again, you're going to sum up all of these columns. All of these columns get summed up. And that gives you your frequency distribution, these first 5 numbers. In other words, 13 people said 1, 16 people said 2, 7 people 3, 1 said 4, and 3 said 5. And you're going to move those numbers and they're going to go over here just like that. That's your frequency distribution. 13 people said they would definitely buy, and so on. But as I talked about earlier, when we summarize and analyze and write an analysis for our client, we percentage those numbers. So here's the same information, but this time it's shown as a percentage. So you can see here the formula. I took this 13 and divided it by 40. Why 40? Because that's my total sample. So I can conclude that 33% of the people I interviewed said they would definitely buy my new idea. 40% said they would probably buy it, and so on. So we have our frequency distribution, percentage distribution, so you need to do both. So the next thing you can do is you're going to take the percentage distribution and you're going to create a bar chart that looks similar to this. Now, you don't have to do the same colors as me or anything, and you can make it look nicer than I did if you want. I take out the grid lines just because I find it's a bit less cluttered and you don't really need it. But you should have the percentage in the bar and label each. See here it says definitely will buy. There's the 33%, there's the 40%, and so on. So make it look nice now in Excel, because when it comes time to creating your PowerPoint document, you can just cut and paste this right out of Excel into your PowerPoint. You will not be using this in your Word report. You don't show the charts in Word report. You're going to be showing the percentage distribution in your Word report, okay? Not the frequency, because remember, we just show percentages in our reports. Okay, that's a quick recap of what I explained the other day. Now let's turn to our statistics. So the first thing you're going to want to show is the mean, or the average. And again, this is just for question 1, because it's the only interval question. So the way you calculate the average is you basically look at these weighted scores and you take an average of all of those numbers, okay? And you can see down here on my screen, it shows 71.87, which is what's here. I don't want you to just lift it from the bottom, however. I want you to show me the formula. So for anything that involves a calculation, please show me the formula, okay? That way, it's easier for me to check, because I'm going to be checking all your formulas. And the other thing is, sometimes people accidentally, like let's say I missed this first number and I just dragged from here down and maybe I didn't get quite the correct mean as a result. If I see that you used the correct formula, you'll get partial marks for that. If you don't show me the formula and it's not correct, you'll get 0. So it's in your interest to show your formulas, okay? So this mean, this basically says that on average, the mean level of purchase intent for my product is 71.9, right? That's not a percentage, it's a mean. That's the average interest level, okay? And then I want to know what the range is, right? Because remember the range, so mean is the central tendency. And now let's look at the variability. So range is one of the ways we look at it. So we look at the minimum and the maximum. So the minimum, it looks like some people, looks like, we used every point on the scale, didn't we? Somebody answered for all 5 points. So we know we use the full extent of the scale. So the minimum is 0, right? Because some people said they definitely will not buy it. So I put a 0 here for minimum. And the maximum is 100 because we had some people say they definitely will buy. So minimum 0, maximum 100. So if I do the math and subtract the minimum from the maximum, I get 100. Okay, and you should really show the formula there. I didn't show the formula, but you could easily just pop the formula in there. The sum, you can see, is equals G45, and G45 is the sum right here. That's the sum of all the weighted averages of the weighted scores. Okay, it's just a total of all of these numbers. That's the sum. So that number goes here. The count basically just is the number of people in your sample. So I have 40 people, and most of you will have 40. So that is your count. Okay. Any questions so far? Hopefully that's fairly straightforward so far. Any questions on that? Okay. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to calculate your standard deviation, and we just talked about that a few minutes ago. So the way you calculate your standard deviation is you go up to your formula bar and you're going to add this formula that's in Excel for standard deviation, right? So you can see standard, ST, and then DEV for standard deviation, and you'll notice there's an S, okay? There's an S. Make sure you pick this formula. There's also a formula that's standard deviation, and then there's the letter P. So you don't want to use that one. Why? Because when it has a P, that means you're calculating a standard deviation for a population, a total population. Well, that's not what you guys are doing, right? You took a sample. So S stands for sample, so that's the formula that you want to use. And then basically you just, this G5 to G44, it's all of these weighted scores. I'm taking the standard deviation of these scores. And that's going to figure out what's the difference between each of those numbers and the average. Remember, that's what the standard deviation is. So in this case, the standard deviation is 28.4. That's the standard deviation. Okay, and why are we calculating the standard deviation? Well, what we want to do is get to a confidence interval. And tomorrow we're going to talk about what a confidence interval is, but I'll explain the formula today just so you know. But to do that, you need the standard deviation. Once you know the standard deviation, you can create or calculate the sampling error. Okay, the sampling error. So this formula isn't one that's built into Excel. You have to put this one in yourself. So you might want to make a note of this or take a picture of this as we go through this formula. So you're going to use 1.96, and we'll talk about that tomorrow, but 1.96 is the factor we use when we're calculating a confidence interval at 95% confidence. This will make more sense tomorrow. But make a note of this formula, 1.96, it's the beginning of your formula. And you're going to multiply that by 0.13. 0.13 is your standard deviation, right? Standard deviation. divided by the square root of your sample size, and our sample size is 40. So this is how we calculate the sampling error. 1.96, that's representing 95% confidence. And then in brackets, we've got standard deviation divided by the square root of the sample size, which is 40. So if you, for whatever reason, didn't get 40 interviews, your formula won't look like this. If you only got 39, you'd have a 39 in here. And I think another group, for some reason, got cut off at 25. SurveyMonkey wouldn't let them do more than 25. So you guys would put a 25 in here, because that's your sample size. Any questions on that so far?
Yes. Can I ask if the 1.96 is a fixed element in this formula, or in another cases, will the 1.96 will be changed?
Yeah. So if you're using, well, it'll make more sense tomorrow. But remember, I showed you the different standard deviations. Like, we want to account for 95. We want to be 95% confident in our in understanding what the error is, and 1.96 is the standard amount for market research. If you're wanting it to be 99.8%, you're going to use a different factor than the 1.96, but you don't need to know that for this purpose. It just remember the 1.96. Okay. Yeah.
Okay,
and then,
thank you.
You're welcome. And then once you know the sampling error, so in that, our sampling error is 8.8. Then what you want to do is you create the upper and lower limit. And what does that mean? What we're saying is, remember, our mean here was 71. Call it 72, right? Call it 72. On average, people said 72. And what we've calculated is that we have a sampling error of 8.8, roughly. You can round that. So we can say with 95% confidence that if we were to do this study many, many times, again, we would get a number that's an average that's 72 plus or minus 8.8, because that 8.8 represents the size of the error around that number of 72. Because remember, every time we do a sample, we know that that number isn't exactly, it's not a perfect number, it's an estimate. So this 8.8 tells us the size of error around that 72. So it could be 72 minus 8.8, and that's known as the lower limit. Okay, so you can see here that the formula is we took the mean up here, the 71.8, and we subtracted the sampling error of 8.8. So we took the 72 and we subtracted 8.8, and we got 63. So 63 is the lower limit. And then we did the opposite. We added 8.8 to 72, and we got 80, roughly. So this is our confidence interval, okay? So it's expressed here in the bottom line. We say the confidence interval is 72. That's this mean that's been rounded. You can round your means. Plus or minus 8.8. That's the sampling error. So this is how we express the confidence interval. It's 72 plus or minus 8.8. Okay, that's what you need to calculate for your purchase intent question. You're going to do all of these only for question 1. Okay, only for question 1. Whoops. Any questions on what we've just talked about? So that's it basically, guys. You've got the raw data here. You've got it summarized here, your distributions, frequency and percentage. You're going to create a chart with the percentages, and then you're going to just populate this table here with these statistics. And you're going to have at the bottom here your confidence interval. So in your actual Word report and PowerPoint, you're going to include the confidence interval. So again, this will appear as part of your reporting. So that's for question one. The other questions you'll be happy to know are a little more straightforward in terms of the statistics, because these are categorical questions, scales. And again, you're going to put whatever your headings are, and questions, you're going to type exactly the question and put in the headings, and then show the frequency and percentage distributions, just like you did for the first question. But for these questions, because it's not metric, you're not going to show the mean, and you see there is no weighted average, right? There's no weighted average like there was here. There's no weighted average for the remaining questions, so you don't have to worry about that. All we want to show here is the mode and the count. The mode and the count. So the count again is 40, right? Because you have 40 respondents. And the mode comes from here. You look at the distribution, and what's the most commonly given response, right? It was 40. So that's why there's a 40 here for mode. And then we sometimes also look at top two box and bottom two box, but actually I'm not sure you guys need to do that. I don't think I put that in the other file, so I don't think you need to worry about that. But you are going to do a chart like that, like you did before, just to, because again, this is for your PowerPoint. So you're going to do a bar chart like this that shows the 4 responses to the difference question. And just a note, just to make sure you label your charts with a very short heading. Do not put in the whole question here, it's just too long. So here, for example, you'll notice it just says purchase intention. It doesn't list the whole, it doesn't show the whole question. So just try and get a short heading for each of these charts. Then question 3, you just carry on the same way as you did with the other. Well, you know, you basically repeat the same approach you did for question 2. I'm just going to go to the one that's on eCentennial for a sec, because that's the one you'll be using. Yeah, I'm going to go to the one on eCentennial just a sec. So I'm going to stop sharing this one. That's just the one I did, isn't it? Hang on just a sec. Okay, hang on. Here we are. Okay, so this is the one that's on eCentennial that you guys will be using. There's no data in it. I sometimes use the other one just to show you how I calculated all this stuff. So when you do yours, you can get rid of the yellow and just, you know, get rid of the yellow. I basically did that to show you where you need to enter information. Okay, so we've talked about question 1. Question 2, we talked about. Yeah, so for the statistics, you just need, the mode, and then the top 2 box and bottom 2 box. So the top 2 box is how many people gave one of the top 2 answers, and what % of people gave the bottom 2 answers. So if this is 20, 25, and 30, the top 2 box would be 55. So you'd put 55 here. Oops, not there, here, sorry. 55 here for top 2 box. And this would obviously be 45 because it needs to total 100%. Okay, so that's what I mean by top 2 box and bottom 2 box. Okay, then question 3. This is the advantage question. So there's just 3 columns, right? Because you had 3 potential answers there. So I've set this up for you. Here you don't have top 2 box and bottom 2 box because there's just 3 data points. But by net advantage, that's basically like the top two, because remember we had a great advantage and some advantage. That's what we mean by net advantage. So what percent of people said there was at least some advantage? So that's everybody except those that said no advantage. Okay? Any questions on that? Difference question, or advantage question rather. Question 4 is the question on frequency. So you might have, every group had a different number of response options. So you might not need all of these columns, or maybe you need 1 or 2 more. So make sure you adjust the number of columns that matches your question number 4, which was the frequency question. How often would people buy it or use it? And there you just need to show the mode. What was the most commonly given response? And then you get into your open ends, right? Your likes and dislikes. And you guys, we did coding last week in class. So hopefully this will be kind of clearer now what you need to do. But just to recap, you're going to write the question here, which is, what did you like about the idea, or however it was worded. Then you're going to type in the actual answer to the question. And then you're going to review all of these responses, these verbatims, and the next step is to create your code list, right? Based on the themes. And you'll notice you'll have a code for nothing liked and a code for not stated. That not stated is if they just left it blank and didn't answer the question. That's what we mean by not stated. And you'll need to come up with a number for those. I just didn't put a number there because it'll depend how many codes you create up here. You could just make, sometimes people make it a code 99 or something like that. Doesn't really matter. So you're going to come up with your code list. And then what you're going to do is you're going to assign the codes to the various responses. So maybe for this first respondent, code 2 is appropriate. So you're going to put a number 1 here. And maybe they also said something that relates to the 4th code, so you'll put a number 1 there. So it's okay to have multiple codes for a given respondent. Maybe this person is a code 1, this person's a code 2, and a code, whoops, always do 1, and a code 3. And you're just going to keep coding everybody's responses as you go. Then what you're going to do when you're done is you're going to kind of run down like this and just summarize all 40 people, and there's some totals there. And then these, of course, this becomes your frequency distribution, right? And those numbers will then go up here for your frequency distribution. So this is just like the other questions you did, where like question 1, where you took the totals. Well, for all the questions, you summarize them and you put them here for your frequency distribution, and then you calculate the percentages that go with it. So these questions will take a bit longer because you actually have to go through and do the coding. And then question 6 for the dislikes is exactly the same. Okay. Any questions on what we've talked about today? Any questions?
Yes, Martha. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, mine is not very important. Go ahead, Ines.
Okay. So Martha, can I ask for the I think it's question the Q2 and the Q3 sheets, and like Q3, the statistics, the net average. So like let's say our how to say, excluding no advantage, we have 85%. So do you want me to just write 85 or 85% at the cell?
Yeah, so let's say it's 40, 30, 30, right? So this is a great advantage. I forget, it's small.
Small, yeah.
And no advantage, right? So you would just go,
Yes,
the net
yes.
advantage is 70,
Mhm.
right?
So I don't need to type the percentage, the sign, right?
No, you don't, doesn't matter. You can, it doesn't, I don't care. I don't feel strongly about that. You can if you want 70%. Yeah.
Sorry,
then-
I didn't hear clearly. Sorry.
You can, I don't, doesn't, you can put percentage, but you know, it's not a big deal if you don't either. And then,
So it's okay, rather to put it, right?
pardon me?
Okay.
And then what would the mode be in this example, guys? What would the mode be? What would go here?
Great.
Well, yeah, we'd put the actual number, right?
40%.
Yeah, we'd go 40. 40 is the mode here. Yeah, so that's all you have to do for this question. Obviously, you'd put, you know, the full answer here, not just great. You'd say a great advantage, a small advantage, no advantage at all. I just did this just to make it, keep it simple for this quick. So does that answer your question, Elise?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
So the making a chart is based on the statistic on this chart?
It's based on this.
Okay.
Yeah. And generally, I mean, I suppose for this, you could do a pie chart. For the other ones where there's more data points, I tend to like bar charts better because they're easier to you know, interpret. But we could, you know, you could do this if you wanted to for advantage, just do a pie chart. I'm okay with that. Or you can make it a bar chart. See how quick it is to make a chart, and then you just have to change your title, you know, make, say this advantage. And you're kind of done, right?
Yeah. Thank you. And would you like to upload this file on eCentennial because
This
it might
file
be
is
very
already,
helpful?
this file should be on eCentennial.
Yeah, I know, but there is no chart and examples like this. So
Oh, well, the first one has oh, there's no chart here. I see what you're saying. Well, that's because I kind of wanted you guys to do your own, but because I showed you what it looks like, right? But I can.
okay, then I will just leave you the lecture, record the lecture.
You can, yeah. So it's, I mean, let me know if you're having trouble setting up a chart, but yeah, it's in the example I just showed you, a bar chart. I say bar chart anyway. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. So if there's no other question, okay, so basically, guys, you should aim to get your Word file done this week, okay? Because next week, your teammates are going to need to start the Word and PowerPoint. So what I'm going to just quickly do now, show you now is the Word. I can't remember if I've shown this to you guys already or not. And hopefully I have a voice left to do this. So again, this is, I don't think this is, hang on just a sec, please, sorry. Let's just go to eCentennial. Sorry, I can't find the version that I put on eCentennial, so maybe I'll just go to eCentennial. Just give me a sec. Okay. Where did it go? Here. Okay, so here's the template that's on eCentennial for the report, the Word report. So you can see it looks kind of like what the proposal looked like, right? So you can just go in here and do your running head, your title. And again, it needs to be APA compliant. So you need to do it in Times New Roman 12 font and so on. So this isn't the time to change and have fancy font and so on. For your PowerPoint, you can do whatever font and colors you like, okay? But for the Word report, it's more of the standard APA. So I'm just going to close this for a minute. So you're going to have a background section. That's section 1, and you're going to recap the background information. So this is similar to what I asked you to do for the proposal. So you're going to talk about how, you know, your client has come up with this new idea for whatever it is, and there's a need to conduct market research to assess the potential for this new idea. So again, it's one paragraph. It doesn't need to be super long or detailed. You don't need to justify, you know, why the idea is a good idea or try to sell me on the idea. You don't need to do that in the background, okay? Just identify that your client has this new idea and they need research to help them figure out if it's worth further development, right? That's why we do a concept test. It's an early stage test to find out if it's worth pursuing. And then you're going to include your concept statement. So please use whatever concept you used in your research, okay? And you can remove these words in your version. I just put that there as a reminder to you that this should be the final version that you used. Because remember, we went back and forth quite a few times, most of us, and I kept telling you, you know, make it shorter, and I made some revisions for you. So use the final one here, okay? Then you're going to list your research objectives. And again, if you might be able to lift it right from your research proposal if they were correctly done, okay? But this is where this should match your questions, right? So you're going to have one that relates to purchase interest, you know, to determine the level of purchase interest in the new idea. The second one is to determine the perceived difference of the idea. The third one will be to measure or to determine the perceived advantage, right? That corresponds to each of those questions. 4 is the frequency. 5 is likes, and you know, probably most of you will have a 6th one, which is the dislikes, right? So there's 6 research objectives. So that's pretty straightforward. The methodology, you're going to list all the important elements of the methodology, just like you did in the proposal. So you'll notice that the first 3 sections of the report are the same basically as the research proposal. But again, only copy and paste if it's correct, right, from the proposal. And then you get into your research results, section 4. And the way I'd like you to set it up is start with the question, and you're going to type the exact wording of your question. And then here you're going to show the data table with the percentage distribution, okay? These are percentages. So this comes right out of your Excel. And then you'll see that I've got something here called a benchmark. So you're going to use these benchmarks when you do your analysis. The thing about a concept test is you'll get scores for your different questions, but sometimes it's hard to know, is that a good number or a bad number? You need something to compare it to. And that's when we use benchmarks. So I actually took these benchmarks from the scores that my students got last semester. I thought that would be sort of fun to see how you guys compare to the ideas that they came up with last semester. So on average, my 10 groups in the last semester, they got a definitely buy score of 35%, which is pretty high. So we'll see how you guys compare. And then probably by 30, so those two numbers is combined is 75%. So we've referred to that as top 2 box purchase intent. Okay, So you'll see what your top two box number is when you compare these two numbers here, add these two numbers together. So you're just going to use these benchmarks in your analysis. So for each question, you're going to write an overall summary comment. And you can see I've said reference the benchmark. So let's say you got 30 and 40, right? 30, 40. So your top two box is 70. So you might say, you know, oh, purchase interest in this idea is quite strong, you know, just below the benchmark of 75% or something like that. So you're basically going to say, is it about the same? Is it lower or is it higher than the benchmark? So it kind of just gives the reader an idea of this idea. How does it compare to other ideas that have been tested? And then here you're going to show the mean purchase interest, right? That comes from the Excel, the average, and the confidence interval. Remember, I just showed you how to calculate the confidence interval. So let's say the mean is 70. Your confidence interval might say, you know, confidence interval is 70 plus or minus 10, depending on what your sampling error is there. So that's question one. It's probably the trickiest. Then you're just going to repeat that same format for the remaining questions. So here's the difference question. Again, you're going to type in the exact wording, show the data, the frequency here, and then here are the benchmarks for difference that you're going to reference in your comment. Question 3 is the advantage question, and here's the benchmark for that. So you can compare how you did to the benchmarks. And this is one of the reasons I was kind of pressing you guys to use consistent language in your questions. If you don't use the same questions, then you can't use the benchmarks because you have to ask it the same way. So if we all ask the questions the same way, then we build up this big database of benchmarks. And that's what happens in the real world with these types of tests. Question 4 is the frequency. So there are no benchmarks for the frequency, okay? You just have benchmarks for the first 3 questions. This is the frequency. Here you'll just comment on, you know, how often people would use it. And then you have your likes and dislikes at the end. So here you're going to just list whatever the code is. You know, I like the look of it. I like the price, whatever your codes are, what percent of the respondents gave each answer. And remember to include, if you have nothing or not stated, those always go at the bottom of the list. But otherwise, everything up here, it's a good practice to show these in descending order from biggest to smallest. That's just a best practice. And then the same for dislikes. It's the same as likes. So that's your data, the results section. And then you have 2 final sections. One is the conclusions and the recommendations. And I know we're almost out of time, so I might talk more about this later, but basically the conclusions are what the results are telling you, right? So here you know, the conclusions might be, overall, this idea is quite well received. It meets or exceeds the benchmarks. The one area of opportunity to strengthen this idea is to reduce the price, right? So you're going to pick up on maybe some of the dislikes, if there are any. And then the recommendations should be tied back to that. They should link together. So you might say something like, based on this research, it's recommended that further, you know, that development is continued on this idea, that this idea is worth considering, you know, continued being developed, and look for ways, you know, it's recommended that you look for ways to reduce the price point to make it more appealing or something like that. So it's a way you kind of pull it all together, okay? But it all comes back to what you learned in these preceding questions. That's what dictates what goes into those conclusions and recommendations. So I know I've covered a lot today, guys. We can go over any of this tomorrow if it's not, you know, if you still are not clear. But are there any questions right now on what we've just covered with the Word document? And one thing I will say is, whoever's on the call that's responsible for doing the Word report, even though you don't have the data yet, if I were you, I would just be setting it up now. You can set up a lot of this now, even without the data. So you can, copy this file from eCentennial, excuse me, and you can do your cover page, right? You don't need data to do your cover page. You can do the background. You can do this whole upfront section. You can do background, research objectives, methodology. You can do all that now. And you can set this up, the research results section, because you can type in the question, because that's already known. You can even set up this so that the data is ready to be plunked in. Okay, so you can do a lot of the setup now. Excuse me. Again, if I were you, I would do that just so you'll make your life a lot easier once you get the data. And tomorrow I'll share with you how to do the PowerPoint. So whoever's doing PowerPoint can, again, do the same thing. You can prepare now, like prepare the shell, so that when you have the data, you're not rushing to complete it. So hopefully that helps. So it's 10:20 now. I know it's been a long class. We covered a lot. But anyway, thanks for getting up early to join me. And if there's any questions, feel free to ask me now. I can stay on for a couple of minutes for anyone that has questions.
Thank you, Professor. Have a good day.
Pardon me?
Thank you very much, I said.
Oh, you're welcome.
Have a good day.
Have a good day. Okay, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.